Trust you all have had a good afternoon. Doesn't sound like, okay, no also it can be said. Please sit straight, close your eyes, leave aside all activities. Om. Let everyone chant Om together. Let this whole place resonate with your call to the divine. Everybody join in. Sahana vavatu, Sahanau bhunaktu, Sahaviryam karavavahai, Tejasvina vaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurudeva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapiyat Sarvam, Trailokyam Sacharacharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. There was a huge storm raging outside. Thunder, lightning, rain. Everybody had locked themselves up in their houses. Nobody knew what could happen. The roof could fly off. The windows could shatter. Gathering their children, most people went down underground into their cellars, and that raging storm seemed not to stop. While most of them waited for the storm to pass away, the whole night, there was one young man who dared to get out into the storm and discovered electricity. Very often, we fear the storm, the problems, the sorrows, the challenges, the turmoils, the confusions that may come in our life. There are two types of storms. One that rages outside, and there's one that rages within ourselves. Whenever we are not able to cope up with life's situations, a storm stirs up within us. Life situations never remain the same. And as such, life never brings to us problems. Life only brings to us situations. But when we are not wise, capable, or strong enough to face the situation, then it becomes a problem for us. These days, when you read any magazine, read any newspaper, everywhere there is a crisis going on, isn't it? If you read the newspaper of 30 years ago, and sometimes go up to the internet and read it, the problem of this or the problem of that or the problem of this situation, that was pointed out. Today, everywhere you'll find crisis, crisis, crisis. Once Gurudev explained to us the difference between a problem and a crisis. You are traveling and you've decided to go on a trek. And while you're going on the trek, you're hungry. Hunger is a situation. If there is a restaurant available and you can go there and eat, it is not a problem. But you're trekking in that place where there is no restaurant. You do not know how to pick up, because today most of us are so dependent on what is supplied to us that if we are left alone in a forest, we are not going to survive. And if there's a Holocaust, we'll be the first to go. Because living in urban societies, we do not know how to find our own food. If it was a villager, he would have been able to find some fruit, some berries, some root and eat. But you are an urban person, till a shopping mall is not there. How are you going to get food? And even if you get some food, you do not know how to cook. It becomes a problem. But if there be a restaurant there, and you can go there and order your food, it is no longer a problem, it's just a situation. And you handle that situation. However, if there is no restaurant around, it's a problem. No house around where you can go and ask for food, it's a problem. You do not know from where to find food in nature, it is a problem. However, if you found a restaurant, you went there, and in the restaurant you ordered the food and you are hungry. And the waiter sees you with a backpack. He wonders whether you are going to pay anything. So gives you a dirty look because you are giving such a big order, but he kind of looks at you. Can you pay for it? You get the hint and say, bring the food. And you keep on ordering and you add along with it, bring me the lemon, bring me the chutneys. He said, there is extra charge for that. He says, just bring me. Don't worry about the charges. And then you argue about the food being not tasty, etc. You irritate the waiter, you irritate the boss because you're very hungry and you want more. And they're just giving you little by little and charging you for everything. But you can pay for it, so you order. And finally, when the bill comes there, and you look at the huge bill, then you argue with him. Are you going to charge me for a little chutney, this, that, and you brought me half a bowl of chutney, and you brought the second one with a quarter bowl of chutney. You are arguing with this person. And finally, after cutting down certain things, you're ready to pay the bill, and as you put your hand in the pocket, it slides through. Yeah? Now, it is crisis. You just don't know what to do, even if you wash the dishes. He's not going to spare you. So when does a situation become a problem and a problem become a crisis and there's a storm in your life that you cannot cope up with? Either you do not have the means to solve the problem, or you do not have the wisdom, knowledge, or capability of solving the problem. Or, worse still, you have all these, but you do not have the strength to face the situation. And thus, a situation can become a storm in our life. And life is not always a rose garden. With every rose comes a thorn also. Not thorns. I remember once in Melbourne, I was walking with a group of our Yuva Kendra youth. And one youngster saw a flower. And he goes up to it and says, Swamiji, Swamiji, here is a rose. And there are not even any thorns in it. I burst out laughing. He said, see, Swamiji, it's a rose and no thorns. I knew he was just in love and not yet married. I said, it is not a road, it's a gardenia. What's that? I said, it's a gardenia. Gardenias come without thorns, but roses without thorns, but roses come with thorn. This life situation is never the same. What we have to face in life, everything seems to be going fine, everything is so beautiful, and suddenly everything just turns upside down. A relationship is going on so well, and suddenly she tells you, bye. For good. Or he comes and tells you, it's not you, it's me. She says, correct yourself. That's what I can't do. I'll help you. No, thank you. Overnight, a relationship can change. Then only you can say, जब दिल ही टूट गया, हम जी के क्या करेंगे? अच्छा, अगर मरना ही है तो जी लो और जी के कुछ कर लो. अगर मरना ही है and you have got no need for your life, use it for others. Still, in any difficulty in life, if people get depressed, people get dejected, people become helpless, it's like those people who, when faced with the storm, either get blown away with the storm or hide from the storm and wait for the storm to pass. But there are those rare few who would go out like Benjamin Franklin, out into the storm and harness the power of the storm to give to the world what we all are enjoying today and take for granted. In fact, if we look into the lives of all great people, there were many storms and challenges in their life, many difficulties, but their greatness lies in facing those storms, harnessing the power of that storm, and reorienting their life in such a way that they benefit from the storm rather than fear the storms of life. Especially in our youth, if we have that inspiration that life is not always going to be a calm, peaceful life. There may be certain storms, but the storms of life are not to frighten us, not to break us, but if we are prepared for these storms of life, in fact, with every storm that comes in our life, we don't become bitter, we only become better. See the life of great people. One day it's been announced that he is going to be the king. There is celebrations everywhere. He didn't ask for it. He was bestowed to be the fit crown prince. He's going to be the king of one of the greatest nations of that time. And overnight, the stepmother plays her wiles, and next day, not only he is not to become the king, but he is to be exiled to the forest for 14 years. He could have sat and said, why me? He could have fought for his rights. But firm to his conviction, firm to his values, firm to his dedication, he goes to the forest for 14 years. And if Rama, Sita, and Lakshman did not go to the forest, would we ever know what indeed was their greatness? What strength and power must Sita have to live in that Lanka, bearing all those insults and yet not giving into? What must be that resilience that she had? What power she must have had of her love, her dedication? Where would that be visible if that storm had not come in their life? Where would we know the prowess of Ramchandraji if he did not have to face the battle with Ravan, who had the most sophisticated army in the universe at that time? In fact, many a people's greatness have become visible and expressed itself during the storms of their life. In the same way, there is infinite strength, potential, dynamism, including knowledge that lies within us. Infinite is the potential in each one of us. Yet, very often, we do not discover it until and unless we faced with a challenging situation. We are faced with some storm, and we have to bear that storm. Very interesting it was. I was in a place in Africa where thefts, burglary, all this happens, including they come into the house, murder and go. And thus they live well protected. But in spite of that, one day when there was nobody in the house except the lady of the house with her 2 children, these burglars came in with their guns, etc. And they asked for money. She gave whatever was there at that time. In the hall, they were all put down with the servants. Everybody was put down to lie down on the ground. They were threatening to kill them, but they knew that being Indians, they would have a lot of jewelry. But they do not know a woman's love for diamonds. Okay. With a gun, they took her to the upper chamber alone. What could have happened to her? All the years that I have gone there, everyone talks about their fear that one day burglary will happen in their house, and they've lived in fear, making fortresses around them. But when I met this woman after the burglary, And I thought that she would be trembling, she'll come up to me, depressed and anxious and wanting to leave the country. On the contrary, she came and she was so confident. And she said, you know what, I've always lived in fear of this situation, that what if it ever happens to us? What happens to my children? What if it happens to our family? And she said, when it actually happened, and this is the bravery of a mother, seeing her children in distress, she says, I spoke to them with such confidence and told them, whatever you want, I will give you. Just leave everybody alone. And they said, you must be having a safe up somewhere. She said, come with me. She goes up to the safe. They are standing behind her. She quickly takes out all her jewelry with a hand and pushes it under the safe. Can you imagine? Yeah. And saved all her expensive jewelry, gave what was remaining in the safe, and these people went very happy that they got a loot from a safe. And she says, how at that moment she had the alertness of the mind, the quickness of her movement, that cleverness, how it came to her, and to be able in that situation to think how to save her wealth and her family, and out turned a more confident woman. Very often people will not go for a checkup with the fear that they might have cancer or something like that. And very often people fear of it, but those who get the cancer and they have to face it, those who face it go bravely through it, and they wonder, how could they do it? See the life of all great people. Whenever some challenges came up, did not Mahatma Gandhi face any challenge or obstacles? Did not Subhash Chandra Bose, every step of his life, face opposition? Did not Veer Savarkar and others be jailed in such terrible conditions? Lokmanya Tilak in the jail wrote Gita Rahasya, commentary on the Gita. Taking that opportunity. I remember also, having heard this as a child, I remember that when I had entered business was booming at that time, and suddenly there's always this 8 years recession, and it comes in really bad. It had come in so bad that there was really no work only. And while everybody was sitting outside every office discussing, this recession is bad, we should leave this country and go. Well, if the recession is there and there is no business, there is no work, that was my greatest opportunity to read the Bhagavad Gita in office during office hours. Thus, very often the life's challenges train us, strengthen us. And if you have gone through a storm of life, there is that confidence that I can bear the storm and do better in my life. But there are some who harness this power. There are others who go through the storms of life. From the epics, from the life of great people, we come to know how to take the storms of life with what attitude, and how do we harness this power of the storm. When tsunami hit many, many areas in the east, and especially also in Sri Lanka and India, how did those people go through those deaths that took place? How the country rose up to help them? Thus, There will be storms in life. Joys and sorrows come and go. But if we take them as an opportunity to discover our greater potential, then the storms of life, don't invite them. There's some people who keep inviting storms of life. No? वो कहावत है ना, कुछ लातों के भूत ऐसे होते हैं जो बातों से नहीं मानते. They want to be kicked to do something. No? And that's very typically seen when people say, unless there is stress, unless it is deadlines, we don't perform. And such people, only when they have difficulties, they have been given deadlines, they've been told they're about to be fired, that's when they start performing in life. But the wise ones discover their potential even before, prepare themselves, because we really do not know when the storms of life can hit us. Could ever the prince and princess of Ayodhya, who came from the noblest of all family, from the most loving family, invincible kings, children they were, whether it was Janak Maharaj or whether it was Dashrath Maharaj. Could any calamity ever be there for them? But still, even there, what life hits us. Read the Mahabharata. Every time there was something nice happening, immediately another disaster, another disaster. What had the Pandavas had to go through every time they got the kingship? Another disaster. But when we learn that life is a constant movement, it's a constant change, and sometimes the change of weather can stir up a mighty storm, how can we harness that power of that storm? Perform in such a way that our performance itself is like a storm. Relentless. Nothing and no one can stop it. Therefore, when we had come up with this title for the youth, Storm to Perform, many years ago, in Australia, everybody wondered, storm to perform, storm to perform? One is, how do we harness the power of the storm to perform better in our life? And another thing is that in spite of all the challenges in life, how do we prepare ourselves so that when we bring ourselves into the field of activity, we perform like a storm. And that's storm to perform. Look at Arjuna. He was such a great warrior. Very successful. He has gone through even life's difficulties and challenges. While everybody was sitting and grieving after the game of dice, either complaining, blaming. In fact, all the four brothers were sitting and walloping about that game of dice. Yudhishthir in regret, Nakul, Bhim and Sahadev constantly blaming Yudhishthir for it. Draupadi could not forget it. While they were sitting and walloping on what happened, regretting it, wishing it never happened, blaming it on Yudhishthir, Arjuna was preparing himself for that inevitable storm that would rise after 13 years. Many people hope that sometimes a storm will pass away without causing any damage. But sometimes just when one storm is gone, another storm follows. Or the storm returns. I remember once I was in a typhoon. In Hong Kong, typhoon cyclones come very often. But the buildings are quite geared for it. The city is quite geared for it. But still, it does play its havoc. And we had this big typhoon that had come in. And that raged almost for 36 hours. And that can cause havoc anywhere. And finally, when that storm left, many damages had taken place and there was a sigh of relief. But storm is a storm. It turned around and again hit back. And the disaster was so much because it was unexpected to return back. And by the time we could salvage the first attack, the second attack was even severe. You see what happened? Arjuna prepared himself. He knew that the war is inevitable, that after 13 years, these cousins of his are not going to give the kingdom back to him. He prepared himself rather than sitting and blaming, rather than crying over his destiny, guided even then by Krishna. He went and acquired the most powerful weapons because he knew finally whom he is going to fight. He knew that the storm is going to come, and that storm is going to come with Bhishma, Drona, Karna. And he had prepared himself by getting those weapons to counterattack their weapons. He was prepared for the storm. Others were hoping that it would never happen. Yudhishthira was trying to avert it as much as possible. But Arjuna prepared himself. And still, in spite of preparing himself for that war of the Mahabharata, when he got into the battlefield, he discovered another thing, that life has a knack to hit us at our weakest point. Have you ever been to an acupressurist? Nowadays, reflexology or somewhere? Have you been or no? Those kind of Chinese reflexologists who say, no pain, no gain. Okay, if nothing else, daily try to press the points of your hand. And most of you, press this point deeply, or this point deeply, or better tell someone else to do it. Try it every day. Today you try it. Tell someone to press these points of yours. Wherever there is a weakness, it is going to pain. Thus, as such, life does not give pain. But wherever is our weak spot, physical, emotional, or intellectually strategic, wherever is our weak spot, there it pains. And when life stirs up a situation in front of us, if we are strong enough, if we are capable, it does not cause us any pain or sorrow. There are people, if they have got financial losses, they don't worry. They are able to cope up with. Most business people are like that. They can cope up with it. But if there is a death in the family or illness in the family, they cannot cope up. Some will say, oh, if it happened like this, I could have bared it. But if it was this person doing it to me, I can't take it. Where is your weakness in your attachment? Think about it. Viruses are floating everywhere. Everybody doesn't fall sick. Yeah? If we are strong, then those situations do not affect us. But wherever we have got some weakness, Mother Nature has an amazing way. Don't ever say that God gives trouble or problems. Nature has an amazing way to strengthen us by sometimes pointing out to us our weaknesses. And finding our weaknesses, finding our weak spot. We should not worry, but make every attempt to strengthen that venue of our life, that aspect of our life, where we are feeling the pain, where we are feeling the sorrow. Now, for some of you, if somebody were to just hit you on your chest, you'd go, ah! But some who go to the gym, they say, Maro mujhe, Maro mujhe. Yeah, they stand like Hanuman. Now, can you imagine if any one of you with your fist hit Hanuman, what would happen? Your knuckles would break, but nothing would have happened to him. Is it not? Arnold Schwarzenegger is standing there. You think your punches can hurt him? If you are strong, the punches of life cannot affect you. But wherever it hurts you, there is where life is pointing out that this is where you have to strengthen yourself. Therefore, in life, whenever any situation begins to affect us, when any situation appears to be a problem, when we feel sorrowful or we feel some pain, rather than running away from it, recognize that it is one of life's greatest indicators that this is where life wants you to strengthen yourself so that no obstacle, no difficulties can stop you when you storm to perform. See what happened to Arjuna. Prepared himself, the best of warriors, the best of archers. Everybody looked up to him. He very well knew that this war is inevitable. He was mentally prepared for it. He convinces his own brother also, who's constantly trying to deter this war, that this is not going to end. Finally, we have to fight. But when he comes into the battlefield and suddenly sees in front of him this huge army, far larger than his army, still he's a brave warrior. That would have not affected him. Made him start reflecting. But when he paused in the no man's land to review this situation in which he has entered, in fact willingly, when he paused to review the situation and started reflecting, suddenly he had to face a different type of a storm. Wars outside Arjuna has bared. He has even fought earlier in the Virat Yudh. He has fought. These epics are such wonderful learnings. He has fought those battles. But now when it's a matter of life and death, of his own, and more important, of his dear and near ones, and not only dear and near ones, but noble stalwarts of society. That warrior who has been able to take missiles upon himself, who has fought many battles, stands there absolutely helpless, reflecting and re-questioning himself, for what am I fighting this battle? For what am I doing what I am doing? And that storm that surges within himself of confusion, that makes him rethink about his life, rethink about the purpose for which he was fighting this battle, and to reorient himself to face this battle. He reflects and tries to find out what is the reason for which he is fighting this war. There were many other reasons, but at that moment, it was not worth the cost. If it was for kingship for himself, then there were relatives and the people who were dear to him. His kingship would have been stained with the blood of many. Was it worth it? If he said that I'm doing it for my children and the next generation, then even they were standing there, ready to lay down their life. And truly enough, none of them survived. Then for what? What purpose was he there in this battlefield? And he questioned himself and could not find an answer. And that raging storm within him disturbed him so much that that most capable hero of his time collapses in the middle of the battlefield, unable to face that storm that rose within him and made him start thinking, why am I doing what I am doing? And that storm that made Arjuna so miserable that he became so despondent made him start rethinking about what has he achieved. What is it that he really wants? What is the purpose of his life? And at that moment, not able to find, and it is not that something he had the leisure time to think about what is my purpose of life. He sat there, totally collapsed. But one thing he did was ask. Ask for help when it is required. Don't remain in this depressed, despondent condition. Don't give up on life. And don't be so threatened by the storms of life, especially when you have to confront your inner storms, your inner confusions, your inner lack of purpose, your inner emotions, the heartbreaks that you may have to face, the challenges that you may have to encounter, the sacrifices that you have to make, the criticism that you might get. How am I going to face all this? So he asked Krishna. And what Krishna did for him was to start rethinking and reorienting his thoughts in such a way that he could reorient his life to find out a greater purpose to inspire him to become the greatest hero in history. Thus, very often, a storm of life, if it can make us think, reflect, and reorient ourselves, that storm gives us that strength by which we can attain greater heights, greater goals, and make life more purposeful, more meaningful, and a life of greater achievements. You will be hearing the lives of many great people of our country. Some are visiting us, some we know from the epics, some during our freedom movement, some great people today also. It was the storms of life that made them reorient their life. Even our own Gurudev. There were two storms raging in him. One personal, one the country. Seeing what was happening in the country during the freedom movement, he became an active freedom fighter. Knowing that the pen is stronger than even the sword, he used his pen and of course was being chased around, and finally he was caught. And how daring he was to be hiding in the British cell itself. And protected himself for a number of months, years. And finally even escaped from them, gathering even more information. But finally, when he was caught and when he was jailed, and he saw the pitiable condition that the people were put into, and further, in his personal life, losing his friend, such a young man, and knowing that death can come any time, including he could have died in that cell, in that jail, and therefore they just threw him out on the road to die. The death can come any time, and worse still is the death of a loved one. And right after that, the partition, and I heard this directly from him, that when he saw that during the partition, how people were being burnt, how houses and buildings were burnt, how mothers were literally throwing over the fire their children so that somebody would save their child. Seeing all that happening, seeing the country burn and break down due to the divisions that were happening, made him start thinking that even is life worth living? But he did not reject life, but tried to find answers to life's questions. And that drove him to such great masters like Swami Shivananda and Swami Tapoyanji Maharaj. And that spiritual knowledge that points out the oneness in creation, that points out that the self in me is the self in everyone. That Vedantic knowledge, that was the very root of our culture, the very root of this great grand country, from which emerged its complete spiritual culture, filtering into every science, every field of life. In every home, in every aspect of our life, where religion was not a Sunday, Monday, or Friday affair. It was moment to moment living in all the aspects of our life. Family, professional, social. Because it pointed out that the self in me is the self in everyone. There were no favors, there were no thank yous, there were no sorries. And that's why this culture just grew to its heights, that every country wanted to invade this Bharat of ours. And definitely they did not come here for peanuts. Where one city, one temple was looted for 14 times. And yet it had so much that they would come back again and again to loot. Looted over 2,000 years. And yet, when the British came to India, they found no beggar. In Maclaugh's letter, it is there. They found no beggar. They found no needy person. They had been onslaughted over the years, yet their spirit, their religion, their culture survived. How could a few British soldiers from such a distance, how could they control such a country, rule over such a country? I used to also hear earlier that there were so many invasions, our books were destroyed, and finally we lost the spirit, we were divided, we were ununited. All these things I heard. Once I was in Delhi, and one diplomat came to meet me, elderly man, and he asked me this question. And Delhi people love asking this question for a different reason, because they want to show that we Indians, because they've been brainwashed literally, that we Indians were no good, we were disunited. That's why all the time we had invaders coming into this country. And every time you have to get into an argument with them, and that is because of our culture, it is because of our religion, and all these things that they used to keep on finding out. I only used to say that when so many years of invasion, finally the spirit broke. But this man told me something very interesting. He said, I had this question and I went and asked directly a British general in UK when he was there. He said there were only 1,000 soldiers ruling this whole country and controlling this whole country. Even if we take, there were 5,000 soldiers. That time also India had almost 500 million population. Even if we had a stampede over them, in spite of their guns, we could have just, few of us would have died, we could have easily sent off the British, the Portugal from the country. How did it happen? How was it possible? And that British general said, what we made the Indians think that our lifestyle was greater. And everybody wanted to become an English Babu. When you rule their intellects, they cannot perform. And that evidence came when Maclaugh's letter from Oxford was released publicly. How the complete spirit of that country was destroyed. And 60 years ago, this young man, recognizing that how our country's spirit, how our modern educated people, having lost that pride in that culture, how not knowing the very strong roots of this culture in Vedanta, our country has lost itself in superstitions, lost itself in just aping and imitating countries that were beggars and invaders, and having seen that complete ethos of the country declining, even after he has attained the supremost bliss gained through the knowledge of Vedanta at the feet of the greatest established master of truth, Swami Taponji Maharaj, there remained nothing to be done. That drove him to attain the supremost freedom, not just freedom from parents, freedom from rules, freedom from regulations, but freedom from one's own limitations. And having found that freedom, it is because he had bared those storms of life, seen those cruelties, that his heart could not just sit there in the meditation, in that bliss of meditation, that what a raging storm arose in this man at the banks of the river Ganga, and how he stormed in this world to perform. And we come in that parampara. That how he harnessed that storm, and it is not that there were times that he almost gave up, that led him to the Himalayas to find the truth. And having found that truth, with what power, and we all know that there were obstacles all throughout the way. Nobody encouraged him. Not a single person encouraged him. Finally, only Gurudev Taponji Maharaj blessed him and said that if more than 6 people don't come, better come back to the Himalayas. Yeah? And he made the impossible possible. Even 1 month before the talk that he has himself arranged the sponsors, he himself has inspired. Even 2 weeks before that, people wanted to cancel those talks. Just found a letter recently. Just 2 weeks. And if his spirit had broken at that time, where there was no one to organize those talks, which he has worked himself, and they were telling him to cancel it because nobody is going to come. With a group of just 5 people and himself being the 6th. He started that movement. And think about it, how millions in the world have benefited from it. Thus, the life of great people point out to us that we should not fear a storm, but rather harness its power and storm to perform. And that is going to be the theme of this camp. Are you ready for it? Are you ready for a storm? Yeah? So look back into your life and think about those times when you had a heartbreak or a fear of an examination. Look back at it and see how it has benefited you. Discover it for yourself. See how it has benefited you. If you're facing any difficulty, challenge, problem right now in your life, reflect, rethink, and while you are here, reorient your thinking so that when you leave from here, you're ready to storm into life. That should be your aim during this camp. There'll be, of course, a lot of fun, games, interactions, inspirations, but do spend some time in your quiet self-reflection. Om Purnamada Purnamidam पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ